Hello, 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 and welcome to the College of Creation. My name is Dan.
And my name is Michael.
And we are Dungeons & Dragons DMs who love to homebrew items, spells, rules, creatures, and features for Dungeons & Dragons. This is a show where we challenge each other to make something every single week based on prompts that we get from our community. We've made all kinds of things from items to monsters to subclasses to feats. And today, Michael, what did we have to make?
We had a doozy of a prompt this week. It was an alternative to spell scrolls. And it was left pretty much open at that point. This could be a new mechanic for the game. This could be a different way to utilize spell scrolls, a way to make spell scrolls more accessible to non-casting classes. Any and all of the above were on the table, and I don't know if either of us landed within the circle we wanted to land in, but we both have something to present, and that is what's important. We got here.
Well, and we talked about it a little bit last time, is that it's just it's a challenging prompt because you mentioned that a lot of tables, and I think rightfully so, have taken on the Baldur's Gate 3 rules for spell scrolls, which is just, if you've got them, you can cast them. It doesn't matter if you're a fighter. It doesn't matter if that spell isn't on your spell list. If you've got it, you just cast it. It's easy peasy. It just kind of serves as extra versatility for characters to have those options in combat or out of combat. And I think that's a great and very easy rule to implement. But I did mention last time as well the fact that can, if you've got enough spell scrolls kicking around in your game, it does start to devalue the full casters in your party. There's people who that is their bread and butter.
Yeah, it waters down what they bring to the table. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that what I wanted to come up with this one then is kind of something that threads the needle. It doesn't step on the toes of full casters in the party and do too much, but also allows single-use casting to be a lot more accessible to a lot more things. I don't know if I landed it because I was trying to come up with brand new mechanics for the game and just was nothing was hitting. And I ended up just kind of backpedaling back to an idea that was heavily inspired by something pop cultural, which you might, when I present it to you, be able to tell what it is.
Okay.
It doesn't exactly fit the brief, but I think it's still fun. I think it's still a fun way to add a different way of spellcasting into your games, depending on the world you're playing in.
I'm so excited about that because I went a totally different direction. I didn't focus on spellcasting at all. I think I took the alternative to spell scrolls thing as the prime indicator of what the prompt wanted. So I just found different ways to have things land in the game.
This, I think, is the week where I do wish I had gone a little bit further and done something experimental in terms of game design a little more than what I ended up doing, which is fine. But I think this is the sort of opportunity that really kind of reveals some of the shortfalls in the game itself. Is maybe an opportunity to bring in ideas that are present in other TTRPGs that aren't D&D, that have different magic systems, that have all of this other ways to explore spell casting. And there are some really great examples of that. This, I guess, could have been an opportunity to bring in some of those ideas and really try and land a super cool new mechanic. But I just don't know if a week is enough time for me to create something like that whole cloth for the game. That's tough to do in a week.
Yeah, we chatted a little bit before we got onto recording. What I ended up with was the 5th iteration of this prompt for me. So I didn't even start this version until maybe a day and a half ago. So that's way too few hours to be working on a massive overhaul to a mechanic for the game. I did.
Yeah, that would be huge.
I didn't even get close to anything that is done. But I think the framework is there, which is enough for the podcast, and should, much like your monk feats, I think mine has plenty of room to grow and have different options added to it as it goes.
Yeah, I don't know what my ideas would have been had I had more time, but it almost feels like something that like we would really have to put our heads together on in a real and meaningful way to really get something usable and useful.
Yeah.
Just because the game is pretty robust already, and we've talked about it a lot in terms of our philosophy around creating new things. Really heavily relies on not just making sure you capture the essence of that thing, but really on making sure that is accessible. Making sure that it's not going to be so overbearing that when you're reading the rules, you're just like, I can't. This is too much. I'm never going to use this because it's just like all the rules are too complicated. So how do you capture that idea of like, well, we want to do something that's like, not full spell casting, but also gives a little bit of additional power to some of the things as a single-use thing. But it doesn't have all of these limitations, but then also make it so that it's easy to use, easy to grab onto, easy to implement at your tables if it's the kind of optional rule you would want to do. That's hard.
It's very hard. It's very hard. It's even harder to make sure that whatever you're adding in balances in with the existing mechanics of the game. So whatever the system you're using, anytime you homebrew something, especially something that's a throwaway item or a consumable item or a feature that can only be used a limited amount of times, it's like that factors into the balance of everything too. If you can use a big giant weapon one time, you can make it crazy powerful. But if it's something that you give a character that they can use an infinite amount of times, it's so easy to give somebody a game-breaking feature if you're not careful.
That's not what I did this week. It's not what I made. That's fine.
I say we just get into it. I feel like we're talking around it enough.
You want to just get into it?
Let's just go ahead and start presenting. I'm very excited to see what you brought to the table today, because it feels like both of us are a little bit uneasy. We're not on quite solid ground with either of these submissions.
Let's just get into it then. No more belaboring the point, I suppose.
Yeah.
What was it you came up with?
Please open your file. This is something that I have tentatively called heroic tropes. This is a progressive set of inclusions from a hero's past. So when I thought about the prompt initially, this is not the way I went. I made some sort of magic item-esque thing that essentially diluted a spell ability into a usable amulet, like a wearable amulet that just kind of put the thought of the spell into any character's head, that they would have the arcane ability to do that. I had to write myself around too many of the plot holes. Nothing really made sense. So I scrapped that, and then I went through 2 or 3 more ideas, and then I landed on this. So these are heroic tropes loosely based on character backgrounds. So these are meant to be in exchange of a character background or kind of an augmentation of a character's background. Thinking about a spell scroll, we don't want to devalue what full casters or half casters are able to do with their spell scrolls. We don't want to just blanket give everybody the power to use these super powerful magical effects. So what is the source of a spell scroll? What gives a character the ability to use the spell scroll? It's whatever their foundation in magic is. So I took that idea and tried to walk it back to the beginning of any character. What is the beginnings of any character? What are they able to do? So I looked at some of the most popular backgrounds, and I piggybacked off of 3 of them. So I took the Acolyte, the Hermit, and the Sage backgrounds, all very popular, all recommended to be used for multiple classes. And I gave each of them some tropes. So I'll just read the introduction of this that I wrote. As every hero in history has had to start somewhere. Humble beginnings lead to skilled and successful adventuring, and whether a hero seeks glory, monetary gain, infamy, or some other form of notoriety, the path leading up to the start of their first adventure is just as important as their current heroic deeds. In Dungeons & Dragons, the adventures on the page begin at level 1, but before that, characters might have led simple lives, survived natural disasters, completed mundane vocations, or raised families. Characters that bring their backstories into their methods of survival can achieve a much more rich and fulfilling adventurer. You may have walked the path of the Acolyte, pledging yourself to a higher cause, perfect for future clerics, paladins, monks, or warlocks. This trope centers your belief system around a pillar of enigmatic and incandescent energy. Perhaps a soon-to-be fighter, druid, rogue, barbarian, or ranger lived as a hermit in their past, gaining knowledge of the land or a specific set of skills, honing knowledge within the safety of solitude. A past life as a sage could be a direct route to becoming a proficient wizard, bard, artificer, or sorcerer. The cultivation and awareness of the weave and its wonders can launch you into a life filled with arcane power. So how do we implement a heroic trope? During character creation, a heroic trope is designed to be a replacement for or extension of a character's background, by providing guidance for how a character is built initially and supplying additional bonuses as they grow in level. Several small bonuses are granted at level 1, which are just the bonuses that the backgrounds give them, and can be used by a game master as a reward for a quest, a piece of narrative advancement, or an investment in the deepening of a character's larger story arc. Below you can find 3 heroic tropes, the Acolyte, the Hermit, and the Sage, as well as a handful of features that each of them can provide to a player character. So these are loot drops, essentially, that a GM can put into a story that are only available to characters that take this specific trope, right? So they are spell scrolls, right? Quote-unquote spell scroll ability features that are available based on your background. Now, I only did 3, but this obviously has room for immense growth. This could be applied to any background. A trope can be kind of plugged in wherever.
That's not what I thought you were going to do, full disclosure, but I think this is cooler.
Oh, great.
This has, already I can tell this has a ton of RP potential. Like, this can be folded into your whole, like, arc as a character and how you play out that character in really cool ways. It reminds me, there's that whole... we've talked about Baldur's Gate 3 obviously already, but like the way inspiration works in that game as being tied to character backgrounds. So when a significant moment for that background sort of comes up, that character gets inspiration, and therefore your whole party gets that inspiration. But this kind of almost feels like it's capturing some of what's very cool about that, which is rewarding the backstory and the background and all of this character building stuff with mechanical rewards that stem from pursuing things that align with that, which is not really a thing that exists in the game. There are not a lot of rewards for pursuing the things that are aligned with your background in the game.
Yeah, one thing that the game definitely... we've talked before about finding holes in the game and not necessarily having them be repaired. Those holes can be used to homebrew things or, use your own creativity as a game master or a player to fill them. This is one of the holes that we have talked about at length, which is the synergizing of a mechanic based in narrative play. It's the reason why so many people, especially, power gamers, min-maxers, they are so combat focused because exploration and socialization are largely nebulous, right? They're so far from the crunchy side of the game that they often get overlooked, and that's what has happened to backgrounds.
I think for most players, you look at your background when you're building your character, you sort of set it up and you look through, what does it give you in terms of mechanical proficiencies? And maybe you'll glance at the feature and think, well, maybe I'll use that once or twice over the course of the campaign. And that's the last time you look at your background ever.
Right. Yeah. Almost never comes back into play. And this is
That's just not that fun.
Right. Yeah. I feel like it's a lot of fluff text a lot of the time, or so little. It's been a while since I've looked through the list of backgrounds. I also contemplated doing the pirate or the knight. Those were my third or my fourth and fifth options. The knight has like 9 paragraphs of text. The sage has 2 sentences. So the imbalance is wild. Wild.
Level of detail is crazy.
Yeah.
But I think you could absolutely load up basically all of the classic backgrounds with 3 to 4 of these sort of tropes that could be really, add that level of interest to that part of the game. That seems really cool.
So we'll start with the Acolyte trope. If you choose the Acolyte at character creation, at level 1, you get all of the minor bonuses that the Acolyte background would give you. You're proficient in insight and religion. I also added perception in there. 2 languages of your choice, and you get a holy symbol. That's what it gives you. I also added 3 extra features that would be like these loot drops. They would be like finding a spell scroll in the game somewhere. The first one I called Path of Radiance. You find a piece of parchment with a prayer that you don't recognize inscribed on it. Completing the prayer causes the inscription to fade away, unable to be used again. For the next 24 hours, you know the Sacred Flame and Word of Radiance cantrips. Within the duration, you can cast them as a bonus action a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. So it's not a crazy feature, but for a day, you have a limited amount of boost to your action economy with some cantrips. Second one, we have Divine Guide. You meet a follower of a higher power other than yours who takes some time to sit with you in prayer. This other creature will offer you a blessing, which can be invoked as an action. When invoked, you choose 2 of your ability scores. For the next hour, one of the chosen ability scores and its maximum increases by 2, and the other is reduced by 2. And these scores return to normal once the duration has elapsed. And the final one for the Acolyte, I call this the Godly Token. You find a small token, a coin, a statuette, gemstone, something like that, representing your deity. As an action, you can clutch the token and beseech your deity to meet with you. At some point over the next 24 hours, your deity will contact you in some way, and it will be obvious to you, even if it is not to others. During this interaction, you can either ask one question, which will be answered with complete honesty, or you can opt to receive temporary hit points equal to 3 times your character level. After the interaction ends, the token turns to dust. So those are other options that are not spell scrolls based in this background.
That's so cool. I really like
Thank
that
you, man.
as just a concept, just a tool for DMs to utilize, and
just a guide for something that you can plug into your game. Yeah.
And just like those 3 examples of like, here's 3 pretty simple mechanical bonuses. They are tied specifically to a narrative moment that can, just be, that can happen organically. But you have this reference here that says like, when they, maybe they visit a temple, then you can run a scene with a different priest of a different deity. And as you run that scene, maybe the character has the opportunity to express some doubt or something, or get into a spirited debate about the nature of whatever thing. And it can culminate in this bonus saying like, hey, you did a good role play. You like have a good thing that like ties to your character and rewards.
Great job.
Really cool play, and really non-typical play. It's just a different style.
Melding the narrative and the mechanical. We're trying to fuse the 2 worlds that are often far too separate.
I think this has nothing to do with spell scrolls, but it is incredibly cool. It's a very cool new idea in terms of mechanic. Like, I think this This, Michael, has legs. Truly.
Hey,
like I really think
you.
that a DM guide companion that just goes through like all of the PHB backgrounds and even like the Xanathar's backgrounds, just adds like three little like small bonuses that describe narrative moments that background is like drawn towards, and little rewards that can be given when that person like takes partakes of that act. Like that's huge, and I think would change the way that a lot of DMs approach that kind of thing, because a lot of time we want to encourage that sort of play. Like I want to encourage my players to go and be interested in like a strange piece of parchment that has half of a prayer on it, right? Like I want them to be interested in it, so I put it in the game and they pick it up and it's just like loot that just sort of like expands the lore, and that's about all it does. Somebody can express their interest in it, and if it's a player who just naturally gravitates towards playing those things out, maybe they would just say over the next downtime, I really want to like try and translate this prayer.
I want to look into this,
and that's super cool, but I don't have a really solid way to reward them all the time. I don't have something codified within the system that says, here's how you can reward that. This is huge for that. Encouraging that sort of play and really rewarding it. I think this is great.
Thank you, man. Thanks. I really wanted to lean into not just the illusion of choice or the illusion of what your character has to be when you pick a background. It's like we were saying before, not to beat a dead horse, but when you pick your background, it just kind of goes away after character creation, and this allows that choice to have some weight throughout the entire game. And it doesn't have to be defined by class. I think my biggest goal with this is you could have a barbarian that chooses the acolyte background. You could have a totally devout barbarian that otherwise would not have any of these options. But you're raging through a temple and you find a priest, and he's like, hey, you seem like you're down with the divine. And the barbarian's like, yeah, let me put my axe down real quick. Let's pray together.
That's great. I think leaving it aside from class, giving abilities that aren't tied to class choice at all, huge. And always useful.
Thank you, man. Moving down the document, the next trope I have is the Hermit. Again, at level 1, you get the same things as the Hermit background, medicine and survival. I also added in nature there, and proficiency with a herbalism kit. The 3 options I have here, the first of which is Wild Heart. You find a nondescript bottle of oil. As an action, you can add 5 drops of blood from any beast and stir into it for 1 minute. A creature covered in this concoction has advantage on any charisma-based checks made against a beast, and beasts will not willingly attack them unless they are attacked first. The second is a Natural Manipulator. Through your knowledge of the land, you find the correct materials to give you a limited spellcasting ability. For the next 24 hours, you know either the Frostbite, Infestation, or Thorn Whip cantrip. Whenever you cast your chosen cantrip, you can choose to forego the damage dealt, making use of the secondary effect only. So moving people around, pulling people across the battlefield, giving them disadvantage on attacks without actually damaging them. And the last one, Primal Apparition. You find a small carving in a tree, a protrusion in the earth, or inconsistency in plant life that you can see, indicating the presence of a spirit of nature. The spirit chooses to bind itself to you and can be invoked as an action. Once invoked, you can add 1d8 cold or psychic damage, your choice, to 1 attack per turn for the next 24 hours. If the spirit stays with you for a full 24 hours without being invoked, it unbinds from you, leaving you resistant to either cold or psychic damage, your choice, for the following 24 hours. So if you want to play the long game and not use the damage bonus, you gain some damage resistance for the following day.
That's cool. I like the Natural Manipulator a lot. I like the
thanks,
specifically.
Man.
I like the option to forego damage dealt and just use the secondary option of those spells. I think that's just a cool thing. That's just a thing you should be allowed to do all the time.
I agree. I had this idea. This was in my document of ideas that I didn't know where to put. A player at my home table did this a few weeks back, and I was like, "That's genius." He was trying to save just a normal citizen, not an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
They fell over the edge of a cliff, and they were falling down towards a pit of lava. And he said, "I want to cast Thorn Whip on this person, but I don't want to damage them. Can I do that?" And he ended up, I think I asked for a nature check or something.
Yeah.
But he ended up clearing it and pulled this guy back up with Thorn Whip and didn't do damage to him. And I was like, man, that'd be cool to slot that in somewhere. So that's where I got that idea from. And the last one, I piggybacked off of the Sage background. At level 1, Arcana, Performance, and History. Got proficiency in all of those. 2 languages, and you also have the Hidden Knowledge feature. You find a tome, a scroll, or other text that is in a language you do not know. You can spend 1 minute deciphering the text. If you have a spell list, you learn a spell from another class's spell list chosen by you or your game master. You know this new spell for the next 24 hours, and it counts as an addition to your spell list for you. The spell's level must be 5th level or lower and can't exceed the highest level of spell you can cast.
Cool.
So you just add a free spell.
Just a quick magical secrets.
I think maybe that's the only true alternative to a spell scroll, is you just
add something to your spell list.
You just add a spell to your spell list temporarily. We have the Eldritch Neutralizer. You find a small token, a penknife, pocket watch, amulet, etc. that contains the remnants of a long-lost curse. As an action, you can cause the token to break, invoking the curse on yourself. Once invoked, you gain 1 level of exhaustion, which cannot be removed by any means other than a wish spell for the next 24 hours. After that 24 hours has elapsed, you're immune to being cursed for the next 1d12 days. Anytime you would be cursed, you can use your reaction to pass it to a different creature that you can see.
Cool.
So you just deal with exhaustion for a little bit, and then you're curse-free for, on average, about a week.
It's like a curse vaccine.
Yeah, exactly. You're just getting inoculated, really, is what you're doing. A little hair of the dog to stave off the curses for a bit. And then the last one, I have precognition. I'm not sold on this one. This was the last one that I put in, and I just did it so all of them could have 3.
Okay.
You find a spyglass humming with divination magic. Upon touching the spyglass, you gain a number of foresight points equal to half your character level at the time of acquisition, rounded up. Once per round in combat, you can spend a foresight point to take an additional reaction. Once all points have been spent, the spyglass loses all magical properties. I don't really like that one very much. I think it's strically mechanical.
I think you could probably
like
simplify it and get a similar effect without having to add points to be tracked.
I hate that part of it. Do not like it.
I think the idea is there, though. Just a little bit of just a touch of being able to just glance into maybe some other possible futures very briefly.
Yeah.
That's fun.
So that's that. These are my spell scroll alternatives.
I think
my heroic tropes.
I wouldn't characterize them as spell scroll alternatives in exactly that manner, but I do think that this is a really cool way to grant a variety of characters access to things that they just wouldn't necessarily have access to based on their class choices or race choices or whatever else.
Right.
And utilizing the background to do that, I think, is really cool, and especially utilizing them as rewards for specific moments and actions taken that align with that background. I think that's real top tier work there, honestly.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I was not sure about this, so that makes me feel much better about this.
No, I think it's really a really cool idea. I would love to see it expanded on to a full rundown of all of the base PHB backgrounds and just see what would that look like. How can we envision those different ideas in play? I think that'd be really cool.
And at the very least, if you do have a loot-driven table, These could be rewards that could show up in lieu of gold pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many times I've just last minute needed to figure out something to give the party because they did something cool or they found a chest that I wasn't prepared for or something. This would be such an easy thing to slot in.
Yeah.
That's not just, hey, roll for the gold that you get.
Yeah. I mean, it happens all the time, you know. The finding ways to provide loot while also not making it like, and now you're impossibly rich and the world, like, there is no limit to what is possible for you just because the economy of D&D is a mess.
You can buy a city.
It's we don't need to get into it right now, but the concept of the economy in D&D is just a disaster.
It's horrendous. It's total. It's crazy. No sense at all. No sense at all. All right, let's take a look at yours.
Please open up your document here, and you will find Blankenship's Spellcasting Elixirs. This is named after a snake oiler of sorts in a game of mine. And Mr. Blankenship has something that he would like to sell you. Ahoy there, brave adventurers! Off to do some dungeon delving, monster slaying, and world saving? Well, that's just swell. But say, do you ever feel like your martial training just doesn't cut the mustard when facing down a nasty displacer beast? Or maybe the spells your patron grants you just don't have enough juice to take it on that pesky night hag. No shame in it, friend. Not every skill set, no matter how well honed, is suited for every situation. We all need a little help from time to time, and that is where my spellcasting elixirs come in. One good shot of these concoctions, and even a novice rogue can be ready to toss a fireball to rival the best wizard in town. Step right up and prepare yourselves to be the best that you can be. Blankenship Incorporated is not responsible for injuries, diseases, mutations, hallucinations, chemical dependence, mental instability, wild magic surges, status conditions, or death incurred while using spellcasting elixirs. Please cast responsibly.
Did we switch brains
this week? A little bit.
This is fantastic.
It's very so fun.
I love the whimsy. I love it.
Can you pick out the pop culture inspiration yet?
I'm assuming BioShock.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. We got some BioShock here, folks.
I was deciding between Fallout and BioShock, but it felt more BioShock.
Fallout is also on the edge there. But yes, this is heavily inspired by BioShock's plasmids or vigors. The idea of not having any innate magic, but a little bit of juice can give you some skills that you didn't have before. So the basic function of this is these are all magic items. They are consumable, which I know is a thing that you love. So they are single use still, but
great.
They do allow a little bit more flexibility than spell scrolls, and are designed to, really be an alternative to spell scrolls because they contain specific concepts rather than any one spell. They kind of all rotate around a theme, and you can kind of choose how best to utilize the spells encapsulated in it. So each spellcasting elixir contains a swirling magical liquid brimming with potential. When you use an action to drink this elixir, you gain access to a number of spellcasting points that can be used to cast specific spells. For 8 hours after drinking an elixir, you can cast these spells without expending material components by spending spellcasting points equal to the level of the spell. You can spend additional spellcasting points to cast these spells at higher levels. Just a 1-to-1, cast another point, cast it one level higher. Each elixir type has granted spells in addition to any spells granted at lower rarities. So if you get the uncommon one, it has a few spells in it. If you get the rare one, you also get access to the uncommon level ones. So it's just a matter of how do you want to spend these points. And the number of spellcasting points as well as the attack bonus, save DC, depend on the potion's rarity. So it's not tied to your ability score or anything like that. It functions like spell scrolls in that there is a set number. That's how it works.
I like that a lot. Yeah, it can be completely external.
Yeah, and it doesn't punish a fighter for wanting to use it if that fighter doesn't have anything in their mental skills.
Right.
The effects of each elixir fade if you drink a different spellcasting elixir or take a short rest. So that's just the limiting feature that you can't just down all of them and basically be a full spellcaster, and you can't you can't keep it going all day long or anything like that. If you rest, it fades and it washes out of your system basically. So there's only 3 levels of rarity as well. I didn't want to go up higher and grant really high level spells. I want to keep it pretty simple stuff. You can still utilize these things, but your regular spellcasters are always going to have more juice. So the uncommon ones have 3 spellcasting points. They have an attack bonus of 5 and a save DC of 13. Rare goes up to 5 spellcasting points, attack bonus plus 7 and save DC 15. And very rare goes up to a maximum of 7 spellcasting points with an attack bonus of 9 and a save DC of 17. I don't have to go through all of these, but just know there are, how many of these do I have right now? 4, 8, 9. Here, and they go by the names of Nullify, Spawn, Foresight, Shift, Hoodwink, Allure, Commuter, Veil, and Burst. They are loosely tied to schools of magic for the most part. So Nullify is all strictly defensive abjuration spells. Ones that either dispel, undo magic, or just defend. Spawn is specifically summons from the Conjuration school. Yeah. Lots of summons, lots of little things you could throw around the battlefield. Foresight is divination, number of location, and being able to see and perceive the world around you a little bit better. Shift is all transmutation, primarily focused on transforming yourself, with the one caveat of polymorph also loaded in there. I considered making it self-only, but that's not a good spell to use on yourself.
Yeah, always better on somebody else.
Yeah, Hoodwink is all illusion-based, primarily to charm, mislead, mostly do things like invisibility, disguise, that sort of thing. Allure is charm effects for the most part. Commuter is movement effects for the most part. Veil is sort of death magic-ish. So there is some minor healing there, as well as some dealing with really minor manipulation of undead. So Speak with Dead and then Dance Macabre is the very rare 5th level one that actually gives you a little ability to puppet. And then Burst is just your straight up evocation. It just hits hard with the most damaging spells that are mostly available to you at each level. These all only have 1, 2, 3, 8-ish spells available in all of them. Just so it's not crazy overpowered. You don't get access to everything. My first version of this was you just get access to all of the abjuration spells. I was like, no, that's an absolutely terrible idea. That's a bad idea. So just to limit it a little bit more, these are all just little things. You can drink a little shot of this juice, have a little access to small spell casting for a short amount of time, a la BioShock.
I am adding this to my game immediately.
Great.
This is great.
I'm glad you enjoy it.
I really like it. I pass out spell scrolls all the time. I really like giving my players the opportunity to feel powerful and have the chance to cast spells that they wouldn't normally cast. Just giving them permission to use things that aren't necessarily optimal normally. Spells that they wouldn't normally prepare, things like that. And this is a great way to do that, to encourage use of spells like Tensor's Transformation.
It's a good spell. That's a great, very cool spell.
It's a really good spell. And oftentimes, spells like that fall victim to not having a lot of utility You choose combat spells over that type of thing. You mentioned Dance Macabre. That is a fantastic spell that a very limited amount of characters have access to. So that's really cool that is now universally available if you want to spend the points to cast it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things in here. Destructive Wave is really cool, but you don't see that very often. Arcane Gate is really cool. Yeah, this is great.
I had a great time looking through all of the spells and being like, what makes sense for this? Because again, I was really I just couldn't get off of this BioShock replica sort of thing. So I was like, what are the things that do make sense for that? And yeah, they are they're not necessarily the first chosen spells because they don't necessarily always have the same utility, but they track in terms of how this is built. Especially, I really enjoyed building them also around theme rather than around a class spell list, which I also thought about for a while, rather than building it around class spell list or School of Magic specifically, but specifically around those things like those spell tags. Like, what does the spell actually do? Mm-hmm. Is it movement? Is it control? Is it summoning? Like all of those different little tags and lumping those together to say you get to do this thing. Also, only having access to one at a time means that you're going to find fun and interesting ways to use them. I don't know. I think it's fun. I like that you're going to try it. Please let me know how it goes. I don't think it's a good replacement for spell scrolls exactly.
It's an alternative.
It's an in addition, it's an right? It is. I did end up just making another thing that lets you. It's another magic item that's a consumable spell thing, which is fine. I'm not mad at it. I do really like it. I just don't know if it fits the brief all the way. But I had a ton of fun making it.
Clearly. I can see the love with which it was made.
Thanks. I'm glad. I'm really glad.
No, this is really awesome. It's what we both like as GMs. It provides a lot of versatility without being super overpowered. It ties in narrative stuff with mechanical things. Like, how are you getting these? Where are you going to get these elixirs?
Yes.
I'm sure not just a magic shop on the street of your capital city. These could be placed in really seedy districts.
Yeah, that's
really cool.
That's the other question I had for you. I had it in the original rules, and then at a certain point I decided that feels like too much, and it also feels too close to a bunch of other stuff that I've created. But that whole concept in BioShock is that these things are powerful, but almost too powerful in that they will start to create chemical dependency, and you will you'll have a society that breaks down because people can just buy crazy amounts of power, and so there's this corrupting force to it that I was trying for a while to replicate by adding a saving throw, a Constitution saving throw every time you cast a spell using this.
Yeah,
but it just it felt like that was too much.
I wonder
risk.
If you just limit the you could limit the use to once per day, because there are spells and other features that stipulate if you use this more than once, the percentage of success goes down.
Yeah.
If you use more than one of these in a day to achieve what it is, you have a 50% chance of becoming poisoned or something like that. Or exhausted
some kind of something might be in there.
It's in there. Yeah, it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I want it to be a little sinister.
Well, yeah, I think that comes with the BioShock territory, though.
It's got to be a little sinister.
There's a hint of just grime, right? Mm-hmm. There's a coating of just grossness on top of it.
Yeah. That
if you're willing to stoop down to that level to get additional power, more power to you, lawful good paladin. Live with yourself later after you cast Dance Macabre.
It honestly almost feels like the kind of thing that ought to have a slow drain effect on your alignment. But I know that's just like not a mechanic that gets used in 5e like at all. That used to be a thing in older editions and stuff like that. Things would change your alignment, and that was very common. But like because alignment is such a smaller part of like the mechanical play, I think there are so few features that do that. So I'm a little hesitant to lean into that with this, but maybe that's the way to do it. I don't know.
Even if it's just like a soft nod to alignment, where these are considered to be less than savory concoctions, there is a severe Dream Lily in the rules. Dream Lily, the poison, is frowned upon to be in possession of Dream Lily. Like societally, that's not something that you should have. Like these could be something like that, where if you get caught with one of these elixirs on your person, people they might not turn you into the police, but they're going to be like, I don't know if I can trust this party.
Yeah,
now.
sure. Yeah, that's kind of a fun idea.
The next town or city that my players go to, these are going to be in a shop in some back alley somewhere. I'm going to make sure they stumble upon it.
All stamped with Gordon Blankenship's seal of approval.
I love it.
Yep. Well, I like what you created a ton. I had a bunch of fun making mine. I don't know if either of them are a great spell scroll alternative to revamp the way we think about spell scrolls.
Yours are much closer than mine. You're much closer than mine.
Maybe I can see that. But I do think, for what it was, I did have a good time making this. It looked like you have had a great time making this as well.
I did too. It was a winding road to get there, but I do like my final product.
Sometimes those are some of the best things, though. The ones that take a while to really calcify in your mind end up being really rewarding in the end. Well, Michael, I think then that'll do us, and it's time to roll for a whole nother creation.
I believe so. You rolled last week, so I'm going to grab a D20 here.
Amazing. I am going to pull up our homebrew prompts table that is filled to the brim with homebrew prompts from our listeners and friends and players and all of this stuff. If you have a prompt that you would like to see us try and tackle on this show, we make no promises about how closely we'll stick to the brief, but you certainly can submit them. Go ahead and shoot us an email at collegeofcreationpod@gmail.com, or you can head on over to our Patreon. That is at patreon.com/collegeofcreationpod. All of our creations, the physical readable versions of these, are all available up there. You can read them, you can download them, you can use them in your games, and let us know how it goes. All the regular episodes are up there, but you can also shoot us a message there with more prompts, more things that we can create. We would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Shall I roll?
Give me a roll, Michael.
All right. That is going to be a 12 today, Dan.
12. Ooh, this is going to be fun. We have another monster.
Okay.
And this monster is from Calvin720 Lewis on TikTok, who asks for a stat block for one of your favorite Pokemon.
Okay.
Let's go.
Nice. That's a good prompt.
This is a great prompt.
How many stat blocks do you think we're going to come up with by next week? Certainly not just one apiece.
I'm going to probably end up doing a full evolution line.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
I think that's probably going to be my move on this one, but I'll have to see, I
have to dive back into my old books of Pokemon cards to see what I want to do with this.
Yeah. Have you kept up with the various generations of Pokemon, or are you just strictly Gen 1?
Well, okay. First of all, Generation 3 is the best overall generation.
Okay,
in my opinion.
Interesting take. That's fine.
I think the Generation 3 has the best set of starter Pokemon.
Who are the starters in 3?
It's Blaziken, Sceptile, and Swampert. the 3 final stages. So it's Mudkip, Torchic, and Trico.
Mm-hmm.
Generation 1 through like 4.
Mm-hmm.
I have a pretty good name recognition because those were all in like the Pokemon stadiums, and then they went into Pokemon Coliseum, and they pop up in Super Smash Bros. Now and then. Like the later gens, I struggle.
There's some weird ones. I'm excited for us to both come with maybe a couple dark horse faves in the creation here.
Oh yeah.
Just so we're not making just like Charizard, Charmander. That seems like it's a little too much of a low ball.
If either of us came with Charizard or Pikachu, I would riot. No.
You quit the podcast?
I'm no longer doing this podcast. You have 1,000 Pokemon to choose from, and you're going to do Pikachu. I no longer want to create homebrew with you.
Oh, man. Good to know. Michael has strong opinions about my Pokemon faves. Well, I'm excited to go back down this Pokemon rabbit hole and see what we can come up with here.
This is going to be good.
I'm very excited for this one. Thank you, Calvin720 Lewis.
Thanks, Calvin.
Well, Michael, what do you have to say to the people before we say goodbye?
Dan, I always have something to say to the listeners before we go. I think this one is a bit overdue. Maybe we haven't said this in a few episodes. This one is just going to be a blanket statement to anybody who's here listening to us, enjoying our content, following us on Patreon, commenting or talking to us on Discord or on TikTok. Thank you. Thank you for being here and making the College of Creation podcast as fun as it is for Dan and myself. We appreciate you.
I will second that. Thank you so very much just for being here and being you.
Yeah. We love it. Well, until next time, please take care of yourselves. Stay safe, stay healthy, play a lot of D&D. We will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Hey everyone, it's Michael. Thanks for listening to this episode of the College of Creation. If you want to see our creations from this episode and our past episodes, you can find those for free on our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/College of Creation Pod. And if you decide to become a patron, you'll also automatically get access to any revised versions of the things we've created, plus our patron Discord, and bonus chats with Dan and myself. You can send any of your own homebrew prompts or questions to collegeofcreationpod@gmail.com, and our music is by Fuserwolf. You can check out his tunes on Bandcamp and Spotify. As always, thank you so much for listening.